Imagine having a job that requires you to put your life on the line every day. Imagine that your daily routine involved defusing deadly bombs or driving at dangerous speeds, where a single mistake, just one wrong move, could be fatal. For most people, such high-risk work would be a living nightmare. But for a small percentage of people, working on the edge provides the greatest possible satisfaction. Hello, I'm Bill Curtis. In this program, we'll meet three people whose jobs require remarkable skill, courage, and some say, a lack of common sense. First, we'll take a ride with a former mafia princess whose skills as a getaway driver have made her a success in Hollywood. Then we'll meet a New York bomb squad officer whose typical day at the office involves dismantling deadly explosives. And finally, a woman whose ability to twist and turn in an airplane just feet above the ground has made her one of the top aerobatic pilots in the world. Who are these people, and what motivates them to risk their lives on a daily basis? Scientists think they have part of the answer, but whether risk takers are responding to childhood experiences or genetic destiny may always remain unexplained. To the average viewer, this is just another car commercial. But to professional stunt car driver Georgia Durante, what goes on behind the scenes is a matter of life and death.
We're working with booms, we're working with helicopters. You don't see how close that helicopter is. You don't see that boom on the ground when you're driving at 80 miles an hour and it's lifting up and you have to go under it. That one wrong move and you could be decapitated.
The risks of stunt car driving are numerous. As cars snake and turn at top speeds, only inches apart, one tap of the brakes could mean a major pileup. Dropping off the accelerator just 1 mile per hour could land a helicopter in your trunk.
Every shot that we do, there is an element of risk and chance that you take. And the more exciting the shot, the more extreme with speed and everything to get a more exciting shot, there's a greater risk involved.
Georgia owns a precision driving company called Performance 2. She and her team, many of whom are professional race car drivers, execute stunts for commercials and movies.
This is what these two cars are going to...
Each move is carefully rehearsed, but accidents still happen.
I was driving a vintage Dino Ferrari, and I had too much speed going into the corner, and being it was a vintage car, had no power steering, and I lost it. And the car started somersaulting over a cliff. And as I'm rolling to my death, basically, all I kept thinking was, oh my God, I'm wrecking a $250,000 car. And I thought, how odd that is that I would think about the car and not about my own life.
The car stopped just short of a 300-foot drop into the ocean. Even that brush with death didn't stop Georgia. Her need for thrill and excitement has driven her since she was a child. Georgia was a tomboy who enjoyed stealing her parents' car. When she was 12 years old, she was arrested for hopping a freight train bound for Buffalo. She seemed to have inherited a thirst for adventure.
I think my mother was a daredevil when she was younger. She was a tomboy, and I took right after her. And I think that's why she could never really punish me, because she saw herself in me.
In 1963, Georgia's adventures brought her in contact with the mafia in her hometown of Rochester, New York. She was with a girlfriend at a neighborhood hangout. There, she met a young wise guy named Sammy G. Sammy G noticed two older guys bothering Georgia and her friend.
he saw this happen, and he took these guys outside and just beat the living heck out of them. And I remember standing by that window, that big picture window, looking out in the parking lot, watching this whole thing happen and saying, wow, somebody's doing that for my honor. I was very impressed by that. I was 13 years old.
At her mother's encouragement, Georgia began pursuing a career in modeling. Soon she was in ads around the country. But that wasn't enough for Georgia. She craved excitement, and she found it behind the wheel of fast cars.
At that point, I was hanging around guys that were building cars, and I used to sit there and hand them their tools, and then when they started racing the cars, I would go with them, and eventually they let me drive them. And when I started winning the races, then I was kind of on the schedule every week to do that. That was a really fun time in my life.
But Georgia's life took a bitter turn in March of 1968 when she was raped by her brother-in-law. Georgia was devastated. The rape also angered Sammy G, the mobster who by then had taken on a protective role with her.
When I was raped, Sammy wanted to have my brother-in-law killed. And at the age of 17, I held a man's life on the tip of my tongue. All I had to do is say, do it, and it would have been done. And I think at that point, I realized how serious that world was.
Soon after, Georgia moved to New York City to continue modeling. She earned extra money working at an after-hours club and quickly became privy to the world of the mafia. One night, Georgia was fixing a drink for a customer when she saw a man pull a gun. Before she knew it, a shot had been fired. A friend pulled her outside, where they waited until the shooter left.
We ran back up into the club, and the guy was laying on the floor in a puddle of blood, and one guy was hunched over him, and we didn't know if he was dead or alive. And they just said, get the keys, pull the car up, and I ran and got the car, and they got him down the stairs, put him in the car, and drove to Bellevue Hospital.
Georgia drove as quickly as she could, trying not to attract the police. They dumped the body on a sidewalk by the hospital, then took off. By the end of that night, she had earned a reputation as a great wheelwoman. Months later, Georgia says she delivered a message to a man who turned out to be legendary godfather Carlo Gambino. It was a fateful meeting.
I'd heard of Carlo Gambino, but I had never met him before. And he remembered this incident and took one look at me, and at that time I was appearing on covers of magazines and felt, well, gee, if she can be trusted with a message like this, and we know she can drive, and looking at me, who's going to suspect her? And basically that's how I started working for the mob.
When we return, Georgia continues to put her life on the line, first driving for the mob, then trying to escape from it. That's next, here on A&E.
The Unexplained will return on A&E. We now return to the Unexplained on A&E.
Hollywood stunt car driver Georgia Durante is used to risking her life behind the wheel.
Bob, you want me? Action, Georgia, action, Georgia.
It's a pattern she developed as a teenager in New York City, when she began driving getaway cars for the mob. Georgia began dropping off packages at JFK Airport, which she later learned contained millions of dollars. Soon she was speeding around corners to escape the police. The money was good. The adrenaline rush was even better.
I was excited by that whole thing. I think that the fact that I was trusted by these guys was just a real turn-on for me. That because there weren't a lot of women that were allowed in this world, and that they could talk to me. They could trust me to do something for them.
In the 1960s, life with the mob was full of glamour as well as danger. Wise guy Henry Hill, whose underworld story was the basis for the movie Goodfellas, remembers seeing Georgia at the Copacabana. She was seated at the table of Carlo Gambino.
She was intriguing, you know, I guess to every wise guy in the city at the time. I mean, obviously, and she sat at the head of the table of the boss of bosses. So basically, that's the word that was going around Georgia. Not only was she a gorgeous, glamorous model, but she was a wheel woman that was better than any wheelman in the city.
Georgia became more entrenched in the mafia, marrying nightclub owner Joe LaMendola. They eventually moved to Las Vegas with Georgia's 5-year-old daughter from a previous marriage. Her husband was violent and abusive, and often threatened to kill her. Georgia longed to escape. She made the break the day she realized how much her daughter was suffering. In a flash, Georgia grabbed her daughter and some clothes and fled.
I remember seeing the Hollywood sign, and it was really smoggy, and I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have any friends to call. I didn't know anybody there. And then I realized I had $7 in my pocket, and I knew I couldn't go back.
Georgia struggled to rebuild her life in Hollywood while trying to keep a low profile. At first, she pursued modeling, the only legitimate career she had ever known. But she soon realized there was a way to make money and legally use her other skill, driving fast.
So I started watching car commercials, and I said, you know, somebody's driving these cars. I know how to do that. I couldn't put it on my resume what my experience was, but I knew I could do it. And all I had to do was to get these directors to believe that I could do it and hire me.
Georgia taught herself to perform stunts for commercials and movies, often gaining experience on the job. She learned how to drive at top speeds, jump cars, and stop on a dime. Before long, she was outperforming most of the drivers around her. Georgia has careened around sidewalks, racetracks, dirt roads, and everything in between. She's fractured bones and come close to rolling off a cliff. But in spite of the danger, driving provides the biggest thrill for this former mafia wheelwoman.
I don't know any other woman that would take this type of a risk, and I don't even know many guys that have really come up with things that I've asked Georgia to do. She's a rare person. She just loves this element of danger she puts herself into constantly, and I think she thrives on it.
Why would Georgia choose to risk her life for a job? And how close are the parallels between people who live a life of crime and those who get their thrills legally? New genetic research suggests that some people may just be hardwired to take risks. Scientists have linked a gene to high sensation-seeking personalities. This same gene has also been tied to alcoholism and heroin addiction. The gene rewards risky behaviors that release dopamine, a so-called neural transmitter
that makes us feel pleasure. Dopamine can be released through smoking cigarettes, driving stunt cars, or breaking the law. Scientists say this may explain why some criminals enjoy their crimes.
I think a lot of these people have got certain kind of genes that they've inherited. And criminality runs in families too, just like alcoholism, drug addiction, etc. So we believe that a lot of people who are in our prisons for the most heinous crimes have probably got genetic form of the disorder that makes them do certain kind of things.
Wise guy Henry Hill, who was in witness protection for several years, admits that the most seductive part of being in the mob was the constant excitement. It even outweighed the lure of easy money.
There was an adrenaline rush constantly in that, in that way of life. I mean, for me, it was beating the system. I mean, it was as good as cocaine, or, I mean, it was just a fabulous rush.
Some criminal personalities may be motivated in part by this need for a hit of dopamine. However, genetics cannot totally account for thrill-seeking behavior. As much as half of our personality is still determined by our environment.
The other factors, the environmental factors that are involved, typically have to do with other circumstances in life. Peers, teachers, other people in your life, experiences that you have.
Georgia believes that her insecurities and the violence she experienced as a teenager are what made the mob seem so attractive.
Take him out now.
I think it was being accepted, because I didn't feel that after being raped that I had any self-worth. And these guys made me feel like, I had a place. There was someone that had some respect for me.
As Georgia has learned to value herself, her risk-taking has become more positive. And the same courage that made her a great getaway driver for the mob has made her an equal success in Hollywood.
She could have been somebody's queen for the rest of her life, I mean, if she chose that, if she, chose to be controlled by those people. For her to break from that was extraordinary.
The adrenaline when it's over is, God, I mean, it's such a great feeling to look at the footage and feel that you've accomplished that. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is, but it's something I know I need. I mean, it's a rush that I can't go without for a long time without having to fill it.
Coming up, a bomb technician is put to the test when an explosion rips through the World Trade Center. That's next, here on A&E. The Unexplained will return on A&E.
We now return to the Unexplained on A&E.
February 26th, 1993. A car bomb explodes in the garage of the World Trade Center in New York City. Six people are killed, over 1,000 injured. It's an unprecedented act of terrorism in the United States, an act of violence that shocks the world. Bomb technician Steve Dodge is among the first to set foot inside the building. It's a dangerous place to be. The rubble is still settling, and other hidden explosives may be ready to go off.
It was the biggest bomb that I could ever imagine, or have ever seen, or ever thought I would ever see. And the point of the matter is that I was in awe, all right? I was in awe from the get-go. I was in awe to the last day I helped in the investigation, and I'm in awe today.
Steve was on his way to lunch with his partner that February day when they got a call that an explosion had occurred.
The call didn't really concern me at first because you get a lot of erroneous calls, especially with the building with as much publicity as the World Trade Center.
Within 5 minutes, they were at the building and could see that the call was no hoax. The devastation was enormous.
When I drove up there, we seen smoke billowing out. We've seen numerous rescue workers taking people out of the building in all directions. We've seen a lot of carnage and a lot of smoke and a lot of black faces from the soot. As we worked our way into where the bomb exploded, we could only get so far, but it was basically a black abyss. Water was dripping everywhere.
While rescuers rushed to pull victims from the rubble, Steve and his colleagues gingerly worked their way through the mangled parking garage. They could tell immediately that the explosion was the work of a car bomb. What they didn't know was whether a second device was ready to blow. The uncertainty grew as they were flooded with reports of other explosives.
There were a lot of hoax calls coming in. Once the media gets the word that this was a possible explosion, you have people out there that sometimes make themselves very happy by calling in and giving false bomb threats. And they have to be checked out.
Steve and his colleagues struggled to coordinate their search. They found themselves in uncharted territory.
I think the scariest moment is the anticipation of what you might do or might have to do, okay? Once you consciously make a decision to do something, I think the fear should be wiped out. But it's the minute before you actually make a movement or touch something or pick it up that if you think about that for too long, a level of fear will normally come to anybody.
The bomb squad searched every inch of the building, but found no other explosives. As they gained control of the situation, the tedious work began. Steve was put in charge of coordinating New York City's efforts with the federal investigators. For the next month, he and other bomb technicians worked 14-hour days as they sifted through every single piece of debris, recreating what had occurred. It was an experience they hoped to never repeat.
I was there to learn about this device so that maybe it wouldn't happen again. Or if, unfortunately it did happen again, that the investigative part of it would be much easier. All right, because this has never happened in the city of New York.
Steve dreamed of having this kind of exciting career as a child. He grew up in the South Bronx in the 1950s, in what he describes as a typical family. Steve's father, John Dodge, was a window washer who thought nothing of hanging off the side of the Empire State Building. It was a great job, he told Steve, because his bosses left him alone. A good student and athlete, Steve inherited his father's sense of adventure. When he imagined the future, he imagined becoming a cop.
When I was a kid, I watched all the police shows and things like that. Every single show, I tried to emulate them when I was very small. And it was just a lifelong dream.
To Steve, cops were people who helped others while doing exciting work. It was an appealing combination. During his junior year in college, Steve applied to the NYPD. At the beginning of his senior year, he got his chance to join the force.
I was thrilled with the curriculum at the police academy, the camaraderie. Just the day that they gave me my shield was like one of the happiest moments of my life.
For 7 years, Steve served as a police officer, working at times on the emergency service unit. Explosives were becoming a common tool for radical political groups. Steve's work began bringing him into contact with the bomb squad unit. During this time, several bomb technicians were killed or seriously injured while on duty. In 1982, on New Year's Eve, one detective was blinded and another visually impaired while trying to disable a device near the police station. In spite of these tragedies, Steve applied to the unit soon after.
Bomb technicians will get hurt and bomb technicians will get killed. But as you go into the profession of police work and public safety, you've accepted that. And being a bomb technician is just taking that one step further.
Steve was sent to train at the Hazardous Devices School in Huntsville, Alabama. It's here that the FBI and the Army teach rookie bomb technicians from around the country. Veterans like Steve are also sent here regularly for additional instruction and recertification.
Well, no, then we need to take 5 minutes.
The techniques taught at the school are carefully guarded from the media and the public to keep the information out of the wrong hands. But the classic image of a bomb technician sweating over which wire to cut is increasingly outdated. Unlike their predecessors, modern bomb technicians use robots and other remote technology to detect and destroy many devices. Special suits help protect them from deadly chemicals and explosions. And at times, the technicians actually use their own bombs to dismantle their opponents. These modern methods mean the technician spends much less time in close proximity to the device. The irony is that this technology is as accessible to the bomber as it is to the bomb technician. So the world of explosives remains dangerous and uncertain.
Everybody wants to know what type of a bomb is being used today and what type of training do you counter that bomb. Everybody wants a simplistic answer. There is no simplistic answer. The main problem and actually one of the joys of working in this field is the fact that you have absolutely no idea what's going to be used tomorrow.
Every bomb, whether it's a small bomb or a big bomb, is a bomb. A bomb is a bomb is a bomb. And I take umbrage, especially with the media, when they say, well, this is an unsophisticated bomb, or this is a sophisticated bomb. Well, sophisticated or unsophisticated to who? As far as the people taking it apart or rendering it safe or dismantling it, every bomb is treated the same because the danger level for an unsophisticated device could be greater than that of a sophisticated one.
When we return, Steve faces the dangerous unknown once again, this time in Oklahoma City.
now return to the Unexplained on A&E.
There is no typical day for New York City bomb squad veteran Steve Dodge. Some weeks are calm, filled with paperwork and maintenance. Other times, the calls are non-stop. Steve and his partners sweep hotels and government buildings to protect dignitaries. They investigate explosions that have already occurred. And of course, they defuse live devices.
I've had moments where I was scared out of my wits. I have had moments where I've came, upon a dangerous situation where I felt I wasn't prepared, and with the luck of God, I got through it.
The bomb technician faces unique uncertainties. Steve never knows what type of explosive he will encounter, and ultimately, he never knows whether he'll make it home to his family. Mastering that danger is the most thrilling part of his job.
You get an adrenaline rush when a job is successfully completed, okay? When you know that everything that you did turned out to be the right thing, and that there was nobody hurt, the job was done successfully. That's a professional adrenaline rush.
Up until 1995, the greatest challenge of Steve's career had been leading the investigation of the World Trade Center bombing. That changed on April 19th, 1995, when Steve was called to Oklahoma City. A car bomb had ripped through a busy federal building, killing babies, children, and government workers. 168 people were dead. Steve and his colleagues faced an incomparable challenge.
You had to be at your best in order to help. You had to look at it as this is the culmination of everything you trained for and everything you knew up to this point. And you had to play it out in a scenario that was pretty much mind-boggling.
Once again, Steve was put in charge of coordinating the post-blast investigation with the federal task force. Piece by piece, bit by bit, Steve and his colleagues sifted through every single piece of debris, searching for clues.
The perception is that the bomb is destroyed and that the truck that the bomb was contained in is destroyed is quite false. Usually, upwards of 90% of that device and whatever is contained in it survives. And it's a matter of knowing what to look for and how to look for it.
By now, handling such a high-pressure investigation was more familiar to Steve. But even for someone accustomed to the sight of death and destruction, the Oklahoma City bombing felt personal in a unique way.
I'll tell you this, in Oklahoma City, if you weren't emotional, you weren't human, okay? Not because of the mass deaths, it wasn't because of the mass devastation, it was because who was hit, the children, the daycare center, the Marine Corps recruiter, the agent from the Secret Service, the everyday federal worker. They were you, you were them, all right? They were your family, their family was yours, and you had to be emotional.
What motivates Steve Dodge to risk his life in the line of duty? Is it a biological need, an environmental influence, or simply a deep desire to help others? Most bomb technicians say they feel compelled to protect the public, yet they tend to view themselves neither as heroes nor risk takers.
I wouldn't describe a bomb technician as a risk taker. I would describe him as an excellent risk assessor. There's a difference. When you take a risk, you usually just take it blindly. When you assess a risk, you take it with a confidence level that makes you safe in doing that particular act.
I don't think any of them likes to be called heroes. I don't think most of them even think of themselves as heroes. I think most of them take a tremendous pride in what they're doing, but I don't think they think of themselves as heroes.
Indeed, the bomb squad is careful to screen out those who appear to have hero complexes or seem too eager for danger.
We're not looking for somebody who wants that risk in every case. We want them to recognize when they have to take it, be ready to go take it, but that's it.
Some believe that bomb technicians, like other risk takers, are motivated not by altruism, but by a biological need for thrill and adventure. It's a need that makes the bomb technician not all that different from the bomber.
Somebody doesn't decide to become a cop, you know, or a fireman because he really cares about people. You know, he wants to do it because it's exciting.
They have to look for the big bang, you know, in order to feel just normal, okay? Whereas we can go on with our lives, you know, experiencing these little things. You go out and have a nice little lunch, and that's, you know, fun, you know, and pleasure. But for these people, they really have to have a big kind of a bang in order to feel like they're alive.
These high sensation seekers tend to view their jobs and activities as normal. Where most see danger, they see excitement. Where another becomes paralyzed by fear, these individuals rise to the challenge, actually performing better.
They don't shut down. They can deal with a vast array of complex, novel, intense stimulation, deal with it very nicely. And, you know, they're simply wired differently. Their brains can process it. And most of the rest of us would just shut down.
This ability to excel in stressful situations is often viewed by others as heroic. But for Steve Dodge, facing danger head-on is just another day on the job.
It's worth it because in my life, I've been pretty much a jack of all trades and master of none. And I find the most confidence and ability in this type of field. I don't know whether it's having to train for a culmination of events or whether it's the camaraderie, whether it's working around other highly motivated professionals. But I feel that I'm good at this and I'm going to stick with it.
Next on The Unexplained, an aerobatic pilot takes death-defying stunts to new heights here on A&E.
We now return to the Unexplained on A&E.
From the ground, it's like watching a strange heavenly dance. The plane twists and turns. Then suddenly, it tumbles, head over tail, regaining control at what seems like the last possible second. From inside the cockpit, the world is spinning round and round. As the plane gyrates, the forces of gravity hammer the pilot's body. The blood drains from your head down to your feet, only to be immediately forced back. Suddenly, your eyeballs feel as though they'll pop out of their sockets. It's a dizzying experience. And it's here that aerobatic pilot Patty Wagstaff feels most at home.
I think what I like the best about aerobatics is the freedom of it. You know, the thing about aerobatics is that you're comfortable in all axes. And no matter where you are, whether you're upside down or going vertical or going straight down or tumbling or whatever, you're still in control, but it's a real feeling of freedom.
Even the most simple maneuvers, like the snap roll, are dangerous. Competitive pilots like Patty are required to perform within the confines of a three-dimensional space known as the aerobatic box. At the same time, Patty must be aware of her airspeed, the altitude, the oil pressure, and oil temperature. The engine may stall. The steering equipment may jam. The weather may suddenly become hazardous. And there's always the risk of becoming disoriented and slamming into the ground.
Some people want to throw up just watching me from the ground, but to me, it's beautiful. I love the feeling and the sensation of it.
Patty is a celebrity in the aviation community, considered to be one of the world's best aerobatic pilots. But her achievements are hard-won, the result of discipline, dedication, and the ability to look death in the eye without flinching.
Anytime you're flying high-speed equipment or, you know, fairly complicated machinery at or near the ground in high-speed environments, it's very unforgiving. So making a mistake has significant personal penalties.
It was in Anchorage, Alaska that Patty first learned to fly. Bob Wagstaff, her second husband, gave Patty her first lesson when she was 27 years old. For the first time in her life, she felt she had a purpose.
When I found aerobatics, it was like, oh, you know, this combines everything. It combines the physical side of it, it combines the spiritual side of it, you know, which aviation, there's so much written about, you know, the spiritual side of aviation and the intuitive side and the adventuresome side. And it also was the one place where I could just be myself.
Patty put all her energy into her flying career, training up to 3 times a day. She hired coaches and spent all her spare time competing and performing in air shows. She was a woman with a mission.
Nobody believed when I first started competing that a woman could win. And the women didn't believe it either. And they said, a woman will never win. They'll never let us get that good, you know. And so, you know, the winning was as much about educating people on the ground as it was the flying.
It wasn't the first time Patty had been discouraged from pursuing her dream. As a young girl growing up in St. Louis, Patty frequently told her parents she wanted to fly airplanes one day. Her father, an Air Force pilot, as well as her mother, assured her that she'd want to settle down and have children instead. Yet settling wasn't part of Patty's nature, especially when her parents sent her off to a stifling, all-girls private school.
I wanted to play sports, and we didn't have any sports. And, you know, I wanted to go out and run around and wear jeans and do things that people do now. And you know, the boys had fun. The boys were allowed to do those things, but we weren't. And it was very frustrating.
Patty was 9 years old when her family moved to Tokyo. Though she enjoyed living overseas, her world soon began to crumble as alcoholism tore apart her family. Patty struggled through her teens and early 20s. living her life like a gypsy. A brief marriage to a fisherman took her to Australia. When that marriage ended, she moved to Alaska, where she finally discovered her true passion.
It was all about experiencing life, really. That's what everything was about, until I found what I could put my whole ego and my whole sort of soul into. And I tried a lot of things, and I traveled to a lot of different places, and I allowed myself to experience all those things because I knew eventually it would take me to where I needed to be.
In 1991, Patty made history by becoming the first woman to win the U.S. National Aerobatic Championship. She went on to win the title 2 more times, placing her with an elite handful of pilots who have won the championship more than once.
I think she was born to fly airplanes. She's just one of the lucky ones to have that gift. That combined with her focus and then her competitive fire, the drive to do it better than anyone else. Not so much to beat the other person, but just become as good as she possibly could be.
The joy of aerobatic flying comes at a harsh price, however. Dozens of Patty's colleagues have died over the years in accidents, sometimes right in front of her. Indeed, she has had her own close calls. The worst was in 1995, while performing at an air show in Santa Ana, California. Patty was struggling emotionally with her second divorce. At a critical point in her routine, she lost focus.
I really scared myself. I got too low in a maneuver. I sort of lost my orientation in this particularly difficult maneuver, probably the most difficult maneuver that I do, and I realized that I didn't know exactly where I was, and so I started to recover from the maneuver, and I was probably within a whole, like a roll of coming close to hitting the ground, and I really had never done that before.
Only a few trained observers had any idea of how close Patty had come to crashing, but for her, the moment had been a turning point.
And I realized how much focus it really takes and how you can't let anything else in there. And if it means changing your life, you know, and if it means leaving your spouse, if it means, you know, putting everything else out of your mind for that period of time or for good, to do that, you have to do it because it's the only way you can be good at doing something that's so on the edge.
What motivates a person like Patty to jeopardize her life in order to be the best? And do men and women approach such risks differently? Psychologists say that high sensation seekers tend to share certain personality traits, including an unusual competitiveness and drive to succeed. In fact, their desire to be number one is higher than that of almost any other group of people.
They're aggressive, they're powerfully motivated sexually. They want to dominate, they want to be the best at what they do. They're fiercely independent, they don't like to be told what to do. I mean, there's your archetype.
High sensation-seeking personalities tend to reveal themselves early on. As babies, they're fussier. Young boys may be especially rambunctious and fearless, and young girls will often find they have more in common with the boy playmates.
They tend to be pretty independent. They hang around with guys. As kids, they're much more likely to hang around with guys, teenagers and so on, playing ball, playing football, wrestling, you know, and playing war instead of dolls in house and stuff like that. So they're really classical tomboys.
We're going to taxi from the show line down to Foxtrot.
Genetically speaking, there are just as many female thrill seekers as there are men. However, studies show that men tend to exhibit risky behaviors more often than women.
Go ahead and crank it up.
Scientists say there's no biological reason for this. Instead, many believe it's the result of social expectations.
I don't think there's a deep difference between men and women. I think it's more what society has allowed the two genders to do. And historically, they have not allowed women to be much in the way of public, physical thrill seekers.
Sometimes people think if you're ultra feminine or if you're really a woman, then you couldn't possibly be competitive. or you couldn't get out there and sweat and really kick butt or win or fly airplanes, race cars, that kind of thing. But I feel like when I get out of a race car, or I get out of an airplane, I can put on some makeup or put on some lipstick, go home and put on a feminine top and a little skirt and go out and be as feminine as anybody out there. It's not exclusive, you know.
Male or female, high sensation seekers take risks that protect us, entertain us, and often push our concept of what is possible.
Where would we be without paramedics and firemen and cops and Green Berets and astronauts and fighter pilots and emergency room nurses? I mean, we need those people really badly in many ways, because most of us can't function that way. You know, we just break down, freeze in circumstances that are that stressful and demanding.
How do people who work on the edge face death on a daily basis? Patty Wagstaff once wrote in a poem, "We have to embrace our fears to be at peace." For people like Patty, peace is found, oddly enough, in the arms of danger, and courting death is their way of staying alive. I'm Bill Curtis. Thanks for watching The Unexplained. You're on A&E.